Hi everyone, Sandman here. This video is brought to you by a donation from MGTOW Smurf. He didn't send me a topic with his donation. So what I'd like to do is cover Reddit posts with the same title as this video. I've pretty much spoken about herbivore men in Japan ever since 2013. The person starting the Reddit post shared this quote, and I quote, "The main reason they have for staying single in Japan is wanting to use their money on themselves. There is a common preconception that for men, marriage means having their freedom to use money restricted. This is in direct opposition to women listing financial security as one of the benefits of getting married." Unquote. The idea, of course, is to promote that men should be utilities for women because it obviously has to do with family formation and traditionalism. It's not about caring for men's well-being. It's about tricking men out of their independence to propagate the species. Up until the 1980s, almost everyone in Japan got married. But by 2035, their government is predicting that 1/3 of men will be unmarried for life. The article says that herbivores are thriving and many are financially secure, as opposed to being depressed by their singledom. For the Japanese women, though, financial security is partially about marriage. The economy in Japan is shrinking along with the population, and Japan is not becoming a MGTOW country. In fact, it's been one for the last 15 to 20 years. It's just taken the rest of the world to finally catch up. People over there are saying that herbivore men are choosing to opt out of society and do their own thing. Is that really the case, or are the Japanese women just getting ever more picky and rejecting men that don't make enough money to support a family? The blame seems to be on men detaching themselves from Japanese society. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe society detached from them because they saw them as unemployed bums and wanted nothing to do with them. What if many, if not most, of the herbivore men in Japan are not single due to choosing not to work themselves to death like their fathers did, for a tyrant of a wife that runs their life? Reproduction is no longer a priority over there, and it's becoming less of one in the rest of the world. In Japan, 70% of men between the ages of 19 and 34 are also considered passive, and make no effort to date. The women there are also passive too. In the past, people would look upon you poorly if you were one of the 10% of men out there that didn't get married. But eventually in the West, just like in Japan, if unmarried men make up the majority, it won't be something that's shamed or ridiculed anymore, but will finally be accepted. I also think that the lack of major wars and the slow death of nationalism is lowering birth rates all over the world. Technology is making us global citizens instead of national rivals. Technology is deflationary and lowering prices. Money will become deflationary with regards to the adoption of Bitcoin. It would make sense that people would also deflate too. I'm talking about populations, of course. It's almost as if in Japan and increasingly all over the world, technology is doing more and more, and people are doing less and less. So we're seeing the population of smartphones and computers expanding while the population of humans is falling. It's going to be interesting if in coming decades, if jobs disappear for a huge chunk of the population, and people don't have to go to work because automation does most of our work for us. Will people choose to have children then out of boredom? Or maybe they'll choose hobbies and travel the world instead. For most of human history, having children was the purpose of existence. Right now, there's so many great forms of entertainment like video games, comics, movies, YouTube, TV shows, and more content than a human can ever consume. The Romans had their bread in circuses, but today, we have more cheap junk food than we can eat, and content that we'll ever be able to consume. Both men and women are increasingly atomizing, and the family unit is going to basically hit the endangered species list. I'm predicting that eventually governments will have to use artificial womb technology in order to bring new citizens into the world and raise them so they can have some new tax serfs. Families will be a thing of the past, and the world will look a lot more like the world in the book The Brave New World, where children are born in test tubes. This is just the next evolution of humanity. Families are the best social arrangement up until now, but they're starting to break down. Because families are biologically related people, they rarely have anything in common. They're just living together out of convenience and because it's socially expected. Given the choice, most of us, male or female, would be choosing to live on our own. MGTOWs and herbivores are just ahead of the curve. But if you study the mouse utopia experiments, they show you that once mice have found food and safety, they breed larger and larger populations, only to get to the point where the population crashes to zero. This was observed over and over again. That without fighting for their survival and no struggle in life, a species ends up terminating itself. Human societies appear to be in the process of doing that right now. But the mice didn't have artificial wombs and other technologies to keep their populations stable or expanding. So I'm predicting that humans will create new lives using technology one day and dump those humans into increasingly dysfunctional societies. Men don't want to be slaves to women anymore either, in Japan or the rest of the world. On the flip side, women don't want to be the slaves of men to birth our babies unless it's increasingly only one baby to seal the financial deal. As a species and individuals, we're becoming increasingly selfish and individualistic. Many people think that this is an awful thing. But is it really a bad thing for humans to do what they want and whenever they want to do it? Unfortunately, it's bad for Japanese leaders because they see their citizenship numbers falling. But in the end, it's a good thing for the planet, and technology will allow us to do far more with far less people. Men going their own way is a peaceful transition to a smaller and sustainable population. We need more quality people in this world as opposed to quantity. Populations are falling all over the globe from East Asia to Europe, and this will continue. But men going their own way are just a symptom of what's actually happening, and not the main reason. Not only is Japan already a MGTOW country, but more and more countries are turning into the same thing. At the end of that article about Japan, one guy says this when asked about men being lonely by being herbivore, and I quote, "This doesn't mean that it'll become a lonely society, where individuals live without any connections," Mr. Arakawa says. Being by yourself physically and being cut off from society must not be confused. People are being connected through networks that did not exist in the past. What's important is not looking for someone to be with all the time, but having the emotional independence to be able to believe in yourself and say, "I will be all right even by myself." I call this the strength to live solo. What I want to say is, it's a lonely road, but we are not alone, unquote. I would agree with Arakawa. You're on your own and you have some self-reliance, but that doesn't mean that you can't tap into internet technologies as a substitute for human interactions. They can be just as meaningful and rewarding, if not more so. But no one is mentioning that in the 1990s, the internet started to show up along with the herbivore men. Japan tends to be ahead of us technologically, so its success as a high-tech hub might have led to that herbivore phenomenon. It makes me wonder how fewer men would actually go their own way in Japan or any other country if those men didn't have the ability to communicate on the internet, not only about female nature online, but the ability to talk to one another without worrying about being lonely. After all, most guys that first embraced the internet had schizoid personality disorder. Their chosen way to communicate with the world is through a computer or a video game console. But don't look for a MGTOW conspiracy when the way we communicate is allowing people to live more isolated lives in the first place. Anyways, that's it for today.